Hi.
Hey, Shikha. Alrighty, so we are live, or I would say that the camera is on. We're finally doing this. All right, cool. So I think, I mean, you and I have already had so many conversations, and what we had been wanting to do for such a long time was to actually kind of put this out in the so-called universe or the internet verse and out to the world. So I wanted to basically, that's what I wanted to like start with this conversation was that I guess first tell us we can start by like just talking a little bit about ourselves, right? So just
You
like a
go
little
first.
bit about you. Okay, I'll go first. Not a lot of people where this is going to be, but my name is Chand. I am by trade. I'm just adjusting my. Give me one second. I'm not trying. By trade, I'm an internal medicine physician who is board certified in internal medicine. I live in the U.S. I am from India originally. I'm Punjabi by uh, ethnicity or culture. And over the last many years, I dealt with a severe chronic illness and then kind of nothing worked in Western medicine. And so I, out of desperation, seeked holistic methods and healing stuff and what I used to consider woo yaya, one of which was astrology. And I guess through that journey, a lot of things started making sense. I researched and learned a lot of things, but mostly experienced a lot of things. And one of them was astrology. Just a couple of years ago, maybe 2, 3 years ago, and it started very, very gently and just laughingly engaging with astrology. And then I read. Then just some things just started making sense. I was talking to friends, and then I read a few books, and then I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And anyways, that's my story, how it led me to astrology. Uh, and yeah, and there was an experience when I was really sick, uh, and it was in a deep meditation through that experience that my grandfather came um, in this meditation, in this dream, or whatever that place was where I was. And uh, and I'll talk more about that later. But that was kind of what, in basically in the matter of a day, just completely opened me up and things just started making sense. And since then, it's been this journey. And then you and I reconnected, and we had that phone call where I mentioned about astrology, and now we're here. So I'll shut up right now, but that's my brief story. So if you just want to let people know a little bit about yourself and how you came to astrology and how it's been for you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. I mean, I knew most of it, but you told me that you had a vision of your grandfather, and that was very cathartic for you. But that was what led you to this, wasn't something I think I got before. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm Shikha. I'm in India, um, Odia by ethnicity. Not that a lot of people know what that means, but okay. Um, yeah, so I'm just ending like a 13-year career in corporate marketing is coming to an end. Um, and I do not want to continue this anymore. I think I want to like pursue art and astrology as more professionally from now on. Um, I had always hated astrology. Um, been like a strict materialist, determinist, only adhering to classical physics and Marxism for most of my life. I've stayed away from anything that's even remotely spiritual mm, because my experience with astrology hasn't been great growing up in India. I think people here um, ask the wrong questions, and which is why I guess astrologers also want to give answers that appeal to the masses instead of something that helps them. I think it enriches people more in everything that stand against, which is like more hierarchy, more wealth, more accumulation. more exploitation. So I've always stayed away from astrology, even though growing up, my dad always tells me, like, he still tells me that I have a fantastic horoscope. I'm going to have a great life. And I'm like, no, I don't believe you. I'm not going to believe you. And I still don't believe him, by the way. I don't think the universe is here to like make some people more comfortable than others. I think from when we talk about evolutionary astrology, we'll realize it's all about lessons, right? It's not about comfort. So I've always hated astrology, and I'm still a Marxist, and especially coming from like an anti-caste um, standpoint, because given my caste classification, engaging in astrology from a religious point of view was um, not okay. With I because it tends to with the whole concept of karma in Hinduism and how it leads people to believe that their caste location is a result of their past life karma, which is still a distortion. And I'm so glad that through evolutionary astrology, I'm able to differentiate between the sort of distorted practices and what astrology actually is. So I've always been anti-astrology. That's what I wanted to tell you. But yes, I've always taken your views very seriously. Always have. We became friends like 8 years ago, um, on Facebook, in leftist circles, and I've always like enjoyed what you had to share, your content. Like we've had the same views. So when someone like you told me one day that, I think past lives are real, astrology is real, I didn't scoff. For the first time in my life, I did not scoff. I was like, okay, tell me more. If you telling me this, there has to be something to it. I just came from a place of trust. So then you started telling me, and we had that phone call where you sort of read my chart, and a lot of it resonated. A lot of it resonated. So after that, I'm like, I should look more into this. And then the more I looked into it, the more uh, meaning it gave me from from a very different point of view, not from the kind of astrology that I'm used to here in India. It was more psychological. It was more getting to know my own emotional weather, what appeals to me, what doesn't appeal to me, the way my brain works. I think, frankly, I got really interested when I found out that I have 4 planets in Gemini instead of just my sun in Gemini. That's what got me hooked. And the more I read, the more I discovered, the less counter arguments I had. And like any person with a genuinely scientific orientation, I had to change my views because there was just a lot of evidence against what I believed. So that's how I came to astrology.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's I think that's kind of what I really wanted to talk about, at least on this conversation, was that it's been a similar kind of journey for both of us, right? You mentioned anti-astrology. I would say that I was like that also. I was very anti-astrology to the point that I would get, and for similar reasons, because I also am a Marxist. Uh, the central tenets of Marxism as a science, not as in dogmatic ideology, but as one way of thinking about organizing movements and resistance and revolution. And when people talk about astrology, I would get really, really pissed off to the point that like it was a visceral somatic reaction. Like I've had this, and it was the same thing with very close friends of mine, uh, all who were all leftists in one way, shape, or form, right? Anarchists, whatever we want to call, and like really upset. And then there were some younger people who weren't, and I had this kind of a very patronizing, almost a very, I would say, like it was clearly that I considered myself to be intellectually superior, and that I felt like these are sad, poor people who can't grasp the reality, the material reality, and now they're grasping onto these, mythical make believe systems of planets and stars and how they are, connected to us and all that kind of stuff. And so that's where I also came from. And it was for very similar reasons, specifically, as you mentioned, like anti-caste and like just like, just moving towards a liberated world. It was like, what the hell are you talking about? And I still believe that. Obviously, like, you know, our material conditions will have a significant impact and overpowering. Like, if you don't allow people to exist, then nothing will have an impact on them, right? And like nothing can matter other till we have like some basic form of for existence basically. And so like that was the same thing, and I was so anti all of this stuff. And then it was for me it was definitely like a process, but that the significant impact was uh my and that thing which came to me from my grandfather, like where I hated him. I actually did not like him for the fact that he was a palmist, and he did palm readings. And I used to be like, oh wow, so he's also going around and just like making money and stuff like that. I never really, but I hated him for different reasons. For he had, I felt like he had been unfair to my mother and stuff like that, and my grandmother. But in that meditation, that anger against him melted away. It was the first time that I was actually able to receive love from him. And as an indirect consequence of that, it opened me up to astrology. It opened me up, and it's hard to explain. It wasn't like my brain was working different. It was kind of like I just felt it. So anyway, so that takes me to a great segue to how this something like this happened with Jeff Green. What's his name? Um, the creator of evolutionary astrology,
Jeff Green, yeah.
Jeff Green, right? So do you want to just tell us a little bit? This is, I think, good time to introduce evolutionary astrology and what you and I want to talk about it. But let's just start with evolutionary astrology. What, according to you, is evolutionary astrology? And then we'll talk about Jeff Green a little bit and his story.
Sure. Yeah, let's do evolutionary astrology and then how uh, we came up with the somatic astrologies. Yeah, so when you introduced me to astrology, I just also want to talk about this one thing you told me months ago that stuck with me. Because as Marxists, right, like right now, there are contradictions that need to be solved. But assuming that during our lifetime or, later, whenever, even if you're not here, we do form a classless society. And those are all these contradictions are taken care of. I've always wondered what would life be about? Like if there wasn't anything to struggle for. I mean, there's so many contradictions to be taken care of. So it's a long process for sure. But eventually, like if we survive climate collapse and all of that. So it was something you had said, like humans have always naturally looked up to the stars for guidance. And if it weren't for capitalism, right, if people's lives were in that state trying to just get their basic needs met, we would still be doing that. And that really stuck with me because, yeah, like in a classless society, what would we do? We would explore space and the stars and all these archetypes and what, the meaning of life is and all of that, right? We'd actually all be just philosophers, I guess. So, yeah, evolutionary astrology is very philosophical. The way I came to it is so after you introduced me to astrology, I got on a few apps and like Astrologian's website, time passages apps, and I would because of my extreme curiosity. I'm always reading. I can't help
Four
it.
planets
It's
in Gemini, let me put it like that. I think that
yeah,
that will explain.
compulsive habit. I cannot help it. So I would read, and sometimes the interpretations resonated, sometimes it did not resonate, and I was still figuring it out. What's happening? What's the system here? Why does this mean this? Why, when these planets form this aspect or this angle between themselves, why does this lead to this? And are they causing it? Like, I really needed to understand, like, okay, like some of it is resonating. I'm curious, but what's causing all of this? Do the planets actually carry some sort of like mystical energy? And in some places, I think people would say, oh, planetary positions just mean the energy is there. What you do with it is up to you and stuff like that. But all of those questions were answered when I found evolutionary astrology. And the reason I found evolutionary astrology is because I was actively researching Pluto. I went through a very difficult time between 2021 to 2024, the worst being 2023. Uh, Also similar for you, but that's another conversation. We'll come to that later. Um, but yeah, it was horrible. emotionally. Um, like my whole life, the way I knew it was demolished and then rebuilt. And I knew that during that time I was undergoing something called Pluto conjunct Moon, and I just needed to understand because obviously what happened was very scarring for me. It has left a deep impact, but it was also important. Like I'm grateful for what I went through. Um, I started researching Pluto. I realized there's something to do with Pluto. Um, and I started researching, and then what books to read. You had introduced me to Stephen Forrest, and I think he has some stuff on this as well. But like just researching, I found some the Pluto books by Jeff Green, and I'm like, okay, I gotta read these. And then everything about astrology changed for me because for the first time I started reading astrology through the lens of these archetypes that are so rich, and they do not shy away from like shadow conversations, shadow sites, and shadow work. Jeff Green's stuff is like shadow stuff is right up there. Like he's not sugarcoating anything, which I think a lot of astrologers can do because people are not that comfortable listening to this stuff. But I like things to be as direct as possible. Like give it to me
Maybe
straight.
maybe they haven't, and it's a separate conversation, but maybe a lot of astrologers haven't done shadow work themselves. Maybe haven't met their own shadows to some extent. Like, anyways. But I see what you were
It's
saying.
evident. It's quite evident. They haven't because they're still trying to tell people how to get rich and, like how to make their event content on social media go viral and stuff like that. So, uh, yeah. So when I found the Pluto books uh, and learned more about the premise of evolutionary astrology is that, okay, they believe in past lives and reincarnation. And I think I'm sold on that. Like I believe in that too. Because why not? I don't have any evidence against it. Um, so the premise is that we all come from the source, which is a universe. And this aligns with like new research in quantum physics and a lot of spiritual traditions, and we'll cover that as well. So we're all souls that have come from the universe. The universe itself is conscious. Like all the matter in the universe is conscious, including inanimate matter, like the tables and chairs that we're sitting on, and everything is just like these are these fields of energy that is conscious. The universe is conscious. And people like Alan Watts have already said it decades ago. We are the universe experiencing itself. And that's the premise of evolutionary astrology as well. The souls have come from the universe, and they're just going through evolution. They're going through change by learning lessons that the souls choose to learn before reincarnation. And these lessons are what you find in your chart and the transits that happen to you in your lifetime. That is the premise. And that's why we have something called the Pluto polarity point. Natal Pluto position in one's chart shows where they left off in their most recent lives, what kind of soul they were, what were their shadows, and hence the polarity point is their destination in this life. That's the lesson that the soul has chosen. And the nodes, lunar nodes, being supportive ways of reaching the Pluto polarity point. So that's the premise of evolutionary astrology, and that we'll continue to take births until we exhaust all of these desires to separate from the universe, until we left with no other desire but to just merge back with the universe. So until we become like Jesus or Moses or Buddha, where they have this boundless compassion. They hate their enemies. Like Jesus was like not even mad at people murdering him. So when we reach that stage, are we ready? Like all separating desires have been exhausted, and we're ready to go back to the universe, to the source, right? And this also aligns with quantum physics, saying that the universe itself is conscious. And stuff like Akashic records that you shared earlier today, which talks about there's this field where everything that has happened is being stored as if it's a universe, this personal lab, computer, and all future possibilities also exist there. And how do we collapse these possibilities into reality based on observation, like the double slit experiment explains? which is very similar to, again, what evolution astrology says. So the planetary positions are not creating any energy. They're just rocks spinning in space. They're not causing anything to happen. That's the first thing. They correlate to reality because for some reason the archetypes work. I don't know why yet. That's something I haven't looked into because I'm still educating myself in the archetypes. For some reason, the archetypes work. They resonate with everyone. They're really deep, rich archetypes. And depending on how conscious and aware a person is on their spiritual journey, the degree of resonance varies, but it resonates with everyone, whether it's superficial or really deep, either way. So that is evolutionary astrology.
Thank you.
Does that
No,
make
that's
sense?
no, I mean, listen, it's making sense to me, but I think uh, I just wanted to ask you if you can just talk a little bit about, and first of all, this was so well explained on, the difference. We got into a little bit also about how what popular astrology has become, in the last at least 100 years, but also how evolutionary astrology is, I guess, talking about astrology in just a very different way. It's kind of I think about it like blowing up the playing field and just expanding everything beyond just what is good for you. When you're all or not good for you, but also not what I think about it like this: not what the universe can do for you, but what you can do for the universe, and what kind of shadow work you need to do. It's For me, it's been connected to a very healing journey, right? Connected to shadow work and healing, basically. So I appreciate you made that kind of distinction, um, but why it makes sense to you, how the intersections with what we're finding in quantum physics and also traditional beliefs. But I did want to ask you if you can talk a little bit about the archetypes. Are you talking about natural archetypes? Are you talking about, because I think archetypes might mean a lot of different things to people in astrology, or they might not. I don't know. But if you can just tell us a little bit about what you mean by archetypes here.
Western astrology is based on archetypes. I think all of Western astrology is based on archetypes. Um, Even Vedic astrology, right? It's based on archetypes. It is assigning these meanings to a planet, sign, and house. But the archetypes change based on what um, tradition of astrology you're practicing. So in Western astrology, um, in general, I think it's all based on Greek mythology, which is also used in evolutionary astrology. But the founder of evolutionary astrology trained under Yoganand Paramhansa and Yoganand Paramhansa's teacher, Sri Yukteswar. So he trained under them. So I think it is based on a lot of um, like Indian traditions. I'm careful about using the word Indian. I don't really
Yeah.
know what that means. Um, but okay, subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, traditions from the subcontinent um, is what this is based on. And the archetypes in evolutionary astrology talk about both natural expressions and shadow expressions for each planet, sign, and house. So natural astrology is a part of evolutionary astrology which describes the archetypes. And there is a natural affinity that certain planets have with certain signs and houses. So Mars, Aries, and the first house have the same archetype. Venus, Taurus, second house, same archetype. Mercury, Gemini, third house, same archetype. You go all the way like this until you reach Neptune, Pisces, and the 12th house. Only Venus and Mercury rule two signs and houses. Venus rules both Taurus and Libra, and Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo. So the archetypes for each of these combinations, they they form an evolutionary cycle in themselves. So when you were just telling me about why this makes more sense to you, even from a healing perspective, not from just trying to make yourself more comfortable in the world, but also from a collective perspective. The archetypes from Aries to Pisces, which is the entire cycle, takes a soul through a very specific but holistic journey. So Aries is we have to think of Aries as the of first wave that is separating from the sea, the first zone. You're separating from the universe and you have no experience, no forecast. That's why you're just full of instinct. You just act on instinct. So wherever you have an Aries placement in your chart is where you'll be really impulsive. And it's not coming from a place of malice. It's just literally you don't know what to do. It's like a baby seeing fire, touching fire, realizing it's hot and learning that you're not supposed to touch fire. So that is Aries. And then through that experience, that you realize, okay, some things are harmful, some things are beneficial, you form like a value system. And that's Taurus, where you really ground yourself in these values. And then the soul moves on to Gemini, which is the first sign to engage with duality, to look beyond Aries and Taurus, which are very self-focused, to listening to other people's perspectives, collecting data from multiple sources and processing and communicating. That's a Gemini function. Then after doing all of that, the soul starts to look for some emotional security, which is Cancer, Moon, fourth house. How do you build emotional security within yourself so that you can nurture yourself and others? It is not, like the self-regulation in more Western healing modalities where they're very focused on the individualism and self-regulation. It's not that. It's like self-regulation to be able to co-regulate better. Right? So that's Cancer, Moon, and fourth house. After doing all of that, you begin to realize you have a special sense of destiny, some creative purpose, which is Leo. And the soul wants to go out and like shine its light on everyone. That is Leo. But that can also lead to some um, sense of grandiosity, like some narcissism. There's a lot of shadow stuff with all of these archetypes, and they all balance each other. So there's no shame in talking about any of that. So that Leo's sense of grandeur leads you to Virgo, which is humble and doesn't want the applause, just wants to work and purify things, make things better. And then up until Virgo, it is still very self-focused. Libra onwards, we begin to focus on the other because the journey to becoming Jesus, Buddha, Moses, all of these guys is you have to cross this entire cycle. You cannot just jump to Pisces, become really spiritual, and go back to the universe. You have to discover yourself, then discover yourself in relation to others. So that is first Libra. Then you first learn about yourself in relation to others. And you realize that, oh, you need to consider other people, consider their needs, but at the same time, not to like abandon yourself, which is why polarity now begins to start with Aries. Libra and Aries are each other's polarity points. They balance each other out. So then, after considering other people's needs, you move to Scorpio, which is after Libra, which is Libra is like polite partnership. Scorpio is like intense, deep, merging, like really, opening up yourself to someone and you see each other's shadows and skeletons and how do you work through that. That Scorpio is really intense. And after you're done with Scorpio energy, you move on to Sagittarius, which is truth seeking, freedom seeking. It's more fun. Like it's been an intense period with Scorpio. So Sagittarius is a little more fun and wild and free. But also it is the polarity point with Gemini. The Gemini is all like collect data, data, data. Sagittarius challenges Gemini saying, what is the higher purpose behind all of this? What is the meaning behind all of your data? Do you have intuition or are you just dependent on other people's perspectives? So the polarity begins to build this way, right? Then after Sagittarius, you have Capricorn, which is the polarity point for Cancer. Cancer is just about nurturing self and others. Capricorn is about building life structures with emotional discipline, building natural authority, um, respect. Like it's more external, and Cancer is more internal. And after Capricorn, the soul moves on to Aquarius, where you take all of these skills that you have built to the community. That is a collective. So it is not an individualistic journey. We take all of the skills from Aries to Capricorn to Aquarius, we take it to Aquarius, which is a community. And then once you're done serving the community, you reach Pisces, you're done with the cycle. You just are now filled with boundless compassion and love and spirituality and ready to merge back with the universe. So as souls, we keep jumping around this cycle based on how well we have learned the lesson of each archetype. and where some like shadow work is yet to be integrated. And we keep jumping on to balance, um, from one end to another. And another thing, like in traditional Western astrology, um, having placements in the opposite sign is considered a detriment. Like Venus in Aries, right?
Venus in
They
Aries is a
said that
detriment. Yeah,
Venus is, even its detriment in Aries. I have
detriment in
Moon
it.
and Capricorn, which is inherently their polar opposites. So it's considered to be detrimental. But in evolutionary astrology, this is a strength. This is not a detriment. This is what you're meant to do. You're actually meant to lean into the polarity so that you can balance and the shadows of each other and then embody the natural expression of each, which is like, this is the ultimate point of, it's very yin yang, that way.
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah,
So,
that
wow, that
is,
was great. Thank you so much. I like this is what still amazes me is like. By the way, can you want to tell people like at what, how long ago did you start studying astrology?
um, I really only started studying end of June, so it's actually been like 5 months. But I found
Five.
evolutionary astrology in what, September?
See, that's like, yeah, in September. Yeah, it just seems like around September. And that's just the crazy part, which is, I wanted to highlight that also. First of all, like, that was one of the best explanations that I've had, right? That I've read. And I've seen so many videos and, all this kind of stuff. And everyone's, teaching and talking about this in beautiful ways. Uh, what fascinates me is like, I have known about astrology or reading astrology in my own capacity for longer than you have, right? But your four planets in Gemini and this deep pull that you got in, this is kind of like collapsing timelines, right? Like, what does time mean at this point, right? Like, because 5 months for you is clearly equivalent to 5 years for me in some way, right? And or like many years. So, anyways, I'm always fascinated with that, and I really hope you're able to like start like. I think you can teach well. Like that was just like so well said. But anyways, thanks for explaining the natural archetypes. I have so many like tangents from here to go on to, but just because it's like the first episode, right? Because I feel like we can just keep talking about this for hours. And, like, but I did want to like, since this is kind of like an introduction to evolutionary astrology and how, just looks at things differently. Uh, I think it might not be a bad idea to just, kind of introduce what you and I have been sort of talking about. It's just somatic astrology, right? And what does that even mean? I know I have seen at least another astrologer who's an evolutionary astrologer on YouTube talk about or mention the word somatic astrology. It might not just be us, but it came to us in its own way. And so I guess I can share a little bit about why astrology, healing, and collective liberation. Like that. Those are the kind of themes which come to me. Do you think that's okay to do now?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So somatic therapy or somatics, this become like a buzzword, right? Like it just suddenly blown up. And it's because I think it works, number one, right? Like that's how I recovered largely many things, but it was largely somatic healing modalities approaches, which were introduced to me through the Western lens, which makes sense. I live in the West, I study in English, I communicate in English, and so obviously that's what's going to come to me. It's also what has the most power right now is Western ideology and stuff like that. But clearly, these were informed from ancient traditions. Somatics is not new. People have been thumping their chests to do like grief therapy that I shared on Instagram today for thousands of years. Right, I've seen that growing, and so it's basically the way that our people of color, and even like ancient Europeans before shit went crazy, when they were rooted in their own like land-based indigenous traditions all around the world, were obviously practicing all kinds of somatic methodologies, which were like, and so for me, when I talk about somatic healing, yes, it is a self-healing modality, but it's much more than that because when you are diving in deep into your body, you're excavating memories, and that is kind of one of the modalities that I got trained in was somatic archaeology. You're excavating not, well, I shouldn't even just say memories. Memories are stored in the body, but so much is wisdom also. Like so is wisdom too. And there is pain. But what I learned through my somatic meditations and my journey, what I'm learning is that diving closer to the shadows or meeting the edges, meeting that pain is not just our own pain. That was the first thing which hit me, was that this wasn't just my pain. It was kind of like I was tapping into collective grief or collective trauma, which makes complete sense because we're not living individual lives. We are connected. Even if we are disconnected from each other, we are still, unified in that disconnection. That we're being impacted by everyone is being impacted by everyone. And by the systems around us. And so it just kind of like hit me. I was like, wow, this is not just me. My father has probably felt this. My grandfather has felt this. Other men have felt this, what patriarchy has done and stuff like this, and all the fear, then anger. And so in that sense, it was how astrology was, especially evolutionary astrology was connected, was that we aren't, because we haven't been able to, or, not been allowed to do that deeper somatic healing, let's just use that word, it creates this disconnection, creates the dissociation, creates suffering. And what it's asking for is to sort of return to yourself, return to embrace all these parts, to, like heal in that sense. And that's where evolutionary astrology kind of like makes sense to me. It's not just saying, okay, which is, there's also value in, sure, you're going to have a great next year and then you should get married then, or, sure, all of those things are useful, but it's actually talking, what is the purpose for why your soul manifested. Because ultimately, what somatics taught me was, in my case, and in many people's cases, was that I was not living in alignment with my soul's purpose or values. And capitalism doesn't allow it, but I was also not speaking my truth when I needed to. It was repressed rage and anger, and that was making me sick. That's what also, all the latest studies are showing, that we have known for thousands of years also. But it was kind of like telling me, oh, it begged me to ask this question: why the hell am I here? Like, what am I, what am I here to do? And that is where somatics was one way of moving in that direction. That was kind of like where it was coming, like, oh shit, like my body is actually communicating with me. The pain and the symptoms are all telling me, what the hell are you doing? Right? It's asking for alignment. And I got that through somatic work. And then the other thing, which was evolutionary astrology, was asking the same questions, simple questions. Not how much money are you going to make and how to make that kind of money, which, sure, do what you got to do. But actually, why did you manifest, or what is it that you need to do? And maybe how can you get there? Right? Like, so I felt like those two, and the way this is tied is that, capitalism will create scarcity, but it also enforces a scarcity wound on all of us. To be like, no, you cannot do what you need to do. Obviously, in many systems, we're not able to do, but will keep you trapped in constantly being just thinking about yourself rather than, like finding abundance in community relationships, finding, and discovering that abundance in land and really connecting, like, taking, really listening to your soul will help us to move beyond abusive relationships with each other and actually like building that community. So I felt like this is a gateway, and this maybe not even a gateway, but it is collective liberation. It's one of the great ways to work in that. So anyway, so that was kind of my spiel. Why I felt like somatics was moving in alignment, moving with love, moving with compassion and abundance. Astrology, evolutionary astrology, talks about the same things, and maybe we can combine these two things, or maybe they are the same thing. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, because if we can feel it in the body and we can see it in the chart, maybe we can feel the chart in the body. I have no idea, right? But at least that was my segue, and why I felt like we could just talk about it and like, I don't know, like see where
Yeah,
things
I
go.
just want to take a minute to tell you some things from the things that you just mentioned. Um, for example, you said, through somatics, you started asking these questions like, why are you here? What is your purpose, right? And that you feel like evolutionary astrology explains it. Funny thing, Jeff Green has this quote for the Scorpio archetype, and given your South Node in Scorpio, which means you both have the strengths and shadows of Scorpio. Jeff Green had said this about Scorpio. you have two most important days in your life: the day you're born and the day you find out why.
Find out why.
And you
Yeah. Yeah.
literally just said that.
Literally just said that. Yeah. No. Exactly. No. It's kind of like that Carl Jung says, right? Like you know, your life starts at 40. Till then, you're just doing research, or like I think 40 being that number where most people are like, the hell.
Yeah.
And we call it the midlife crisis, right? Because like, yeah, your brain hadn't developed till you were like 32. Like that's where scientists are now trying to classify adolescents till 32, which makes sense. And when you start figuring that shit out, you're like, what the hell? That's kind of like the second part of your life. And it can happen at the last day of your life to be like, oh, I should have loved people. I should have told them I'm sorry, or I should have loved them. Like, everyone will have that when they're taking the last breath, or at least many people argue that. And sometimes these cataclysmic events, like stuff which happened to me through the severe illness, are moments where you're like, oh shit, like, what do you want to do? And so, anyways, I feel like both of these can help each other. Both of these, like, I know that in the modern world, they have been put in separate boxes: somatics, astrology. I know that back in the day, especially not communicating in colonial languages like English, they were the same, or they were deeply connected. People understood this, that these things are all connected inherently. And I think we're trying to do that, you know, or I don't think we, but like I think people are always trying to do stuff like that. So, anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to say. So what thoughts did you have on somatic astrology?
For sure, like it is shadow work. Like somatics is excavating the memories that are stored in your body, the trauma, and it's not just for you, it's intergenerational. And again, I just want to mention when you said you started tapping into collective grief, even the grief of like your forefathers. That is also reflected in your transits, by the way, because Pluto is transiting through your fourth house, which is your
Family.
home, your internal home, your external home, your ancestry. And Pluto is about pulling up these shadows to the surface so that they can be integrated. You're actually integrating shadows across generations. It's not just your own.
Damn.
So and it's a slow moving planet, so it lasts for a long time, right? In any house, it takes a long time. And you've been doing this for quite some time. So it's just how I just perceive the world now. I cannot help it. Like for me, the lens has now by default become these archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
So I may not know the specifics about any one
Sure.
situation, but I just know generally what is happening.
Yeah,
But
no.
yes, it is shadow work. Somatics helps you get in touch with your disowned parts, the parts that we've shoved, the parts that we don't want to deal with. And that's your shadow, right? And when we disown these parts, they come out in violent ways, in explosive ways, or covert, manipulative ways, so many ways that they manifest. But they're parts of you. And somatics is about integrating those parts together, right? Um, through um, through maybe through the body, through sensual stuff, engaging the senses and stuff like that. Again, it's a very Taurus thing to do, which you have reached on your own, in spite of being very anti-meditation and somatics, all of that from the beginning. Um, yeah, so that is somatics, but that's also evolutionary astrology because it is about integrating shadows. Evolutionary astrology does not shy away from shadows; it deals with it upfront, and that's basically what evolutionary astrology says. And astrology cannot predict fate; it only correlates to reality. And there are two forms of reality that can happen at any time, right? Either the natural expression of these archetypes or the shadow expression. So, and we're usually somewhere in between. So it's always about learning and doing better, integrating. It's a long, slow process. And dealing with shadows in evolution. So your chart can tell you what your shadows are for each placement. And especially Chiron, the asteroid of your deepest wound, psychological wound, that also shows you what you need to heal first, um, which probably can help heal other traumas and stuff like that. To go that deep into yourself and deal with the anxiety and depression and anything else that might come up, you're going to need somatic practices. So that's how I see them converge. They support each other. And we also talked about this a little bit earlier today. where we're talking about quantum physics, talking about all these future possibilities that are available to us. Evolutionary astrology talks about all these future possibilities that are available to us based on what choices we make now, what lessons we choose to learn now. But how do we access all these possibilities? You need to have a regulated nervous system. A dysregulated nervous system will access dysregulated possibilities and collapse them into reality. That becomes a reality, right? Basically, it's the energy you carry is what your life's going to be like. It's as simple as that. I mean, so people all heard that, right? And it's just that simple. But if you have a regulated nervous system, you're able to access more possibilities. If you're in a difficult situation, if you're in conflict, a regulated nervous system will be more likely to think of resolution and repair. A dysregulated nervous system is like to go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all of that. So that's the reality you'll collapse into. So that is how I see all of this coming together. Quantum physics, evolutionary astrology, um, somatics, a lot of indigenous philosophies and traditions involved in all of this as well. A lot of spirituality.
No, thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to I guess make a just kind of make a point here was about this the whole dialogue on regulated dysregulated, and there's kind of sometimes there is this hierarchy where regulated is better than dysregulated. And so I did want to say that the point first of all before that was, yes, of course, and this is in polyvagal theory, like Dr. Stephen Porges and Dr. Deb Dana, they all talk about this, how um, story follows state, which is like the state of your nervous system will decide the story that's going on. And I think that's true to a very large extent, right? Like clearly, and the issue again, not, and the second point is the issue not really the dysregulation, not really being the issue, the dysregulation being mismatched to the situation.
Yeah.
Of course, we need dysregulation, or let's not even say dysregulation, there's a general state of coherence of harmony that ideally our life circumstances would allow that to happen, right? And then there are options. There are times when we do need to fight, when we do need to freeze, when we do need to fawn, maybe when we do need to really fight that anger. Like that's a lot of revolutionary potential is there in the fight, in the self defense and flight, and the coping and soothing of dissociation. The protection of fawning when people don't have any other option but to do that. So I feel like the issue, like the life will force us, and of course we will need to have these self-protective defensive mechanisms. They're there for a reason. I think what Shikha, what you're trying to mention is like how the problem isn't them. The problem is when they persist, and when when our bodies and nervous systems get stuck in persistent states of fight and flight, persistent states of freeze, where the situation actually requires us to collaborate. And then I think organizing is a great way. We've seen this in leftist spaces all the time. I still see this. We're fighting. We need to fight the system, and then we come and we have this interpersonal dynamics where the same dysregulation just carries on. When what was needed was, even when talking with working class people or talking to regular people who are not political, and boom, that anger will come out. What do you mean you support this, or your class? You said this racist shit, and screw. It's like at the times when we need the coherence, when we actually need to, and even one great example would be de-escalation, right? When we are on the streets and when shit is going down, and yeah, that trigger, the fight and flight will try and come out. What we need is actually pretty strong, what we call regulation, to de-escalate the situation, to really prevent harm. So I mean, I know this, but I just wanted to make clear for the audience that we're not trying to demonize dysregulation. The issue being staying flexible, and then inflexible system is what the problem is, when our nervous systems are stuck in a certain way, when that defense mechanism is very important and needed, but it wasn't able to go back down to a state of coherence or harmony, or utilizing these when we need it. Uh, so I
I
just wanted to
understand.
say that.
Because Western psychotherapy makes regulated nervous system seem like you have to be nice and calm all the time, which
Yeah,
is not it. Like a
that's the
regulated
problem.
nervous system, that is a
that's
problem.
that's the problem. We're
That's a huge
always
problem.
staying we should always be calm. No help, then no, we need to burn shit down, man. You know what I mean?
We are meant to get angry. We're meant to get sad. We're meant to get frustrated. a regulated nervous system is one that can find its way back, not that it remains in a calm state at all times. That's not possible.
So yeah, I just wanted to make sure if
Yeah,
anyone's
for the audience.
listening, like we're not telling you to the work of healing isn't to stay calm. I think that's like the biggest thing. The work of healing is not to stay calm all the time. That's literally, which is why like meditation doesn't work for so many people because they've been told that they just need to sit down in this posture. And almost every woman that I've spoken to, or like people on like minoritized gender specifically, like marginalized gender, like constantly being like, I can meditate. And I was like, well, just need to try harder. I'm like, later on, I mean, maybe your body is already tired of being forced to be calm and rigidly like sitting in front of the computer, sitting in meetings like this. Maybe your body is made needs to just move around. It needs to do weird shit. It just needs to be flexible. It just needs to be moving all the time. And this is just creating more stress. Anyways, that's a separate discussion. Point
Yeah.
is, you don't need to stay calm all the time. Please don't do that. You don't need to be happy all the time. You don't need to keep people happy around you. You need to piss people off. And that's what a lot of work is, and which is what we're talking. We're talking about the shadow work. We're talking about meeting the shadows isn't really like conquering the shadows, is actually integrating them. Like
It's
actually,
realizing that shadows are actually huge sources of untapped power. So that is what integration means. Like, oh, you get really jealous. It means that, oh, that it's revealing a need to you, your need that you weren't probably in touch with, and now you know what to do. So this is it's like it's a source of power, something to be like ashamed of.
yeah. No, I think I appreciate that. I think this is like a good like sort of segue towards because we're reaching close to an hour to sort of like. Although I think we can just keep going, but I know this editing software is going to crash. That's a problem.
You know,
But
we can
like, but like
can
like,
end here.
it's a good like segue to really like put in perspective on just the threads on like these underlying themes and how these threads connect all these different things that we as Geminis love doing, which is like connecting things and meeting at the intersection, like exploring the intersections of all these different things, which people also specialize in. They should, like we need, but in reality, they're not really in boxes. You know what I mean? In reality, and the underlying themes being that we're not as the goal our goal isn't to like stay peaceful and calm all the time. The goal isn't to really meditate all the time. The goal is to ultimately like uncover the shadows, is to meet them. And that's your individual, but their individual isn't just your individual, it's a collective shadow. At least I feel as a recovering empath, or like as an empath who's recovering people pleaser, I should put it like that, is that part of the goal is to uncover those collective shadows. I think Carl Jung used that language, which is to, like that is what's going to allow for individual liberation, but also collective liberation. And at least these, which is why none of this shit is going to be super popular because, like, I'm not giving you a pill to make you feel better immediately, which is what a lot of people want. They want to feel better, but they want to feel better now. And I get it because capitalism demands you feel better so that you can go back to your second or third job so that you can get money for your family and stuff like that. But also because we're just used to now, 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 now. And all of this requires changing how we think about time and healing. It's not about, I guess the other theme is, it's not healing, isn't removing pain, or it's not just removing pain. I think about this a lot, how health by the WHO is classified as the absence of disease.
Yeah.
And then they say
Negative.
it's not just, absence, this is also the sense of this, and this. Yeah, but what health isn't just, or healing in that sense. And I think we're all in need of healing. The land is, our planet literally is, trees and animals and everyone from the ruins of capitalism, is not just removing the destruction or removing the pain per se, but actual transformation. Like
It's
that's what,
building.
yeah, it's building. Exactly. Like, like this, and that is something which these systems of language, of evolutionary astrology or somatics, I feel should be talking, or like are one ways of doing. And I think we do this in different ways, but I feel those are the themes, is like, got to meet the shadows, our individuals and the collective shadow. We have to reckon with the harm and the pain that is happening rather than just living in denial or trying to stay happy, which is what I guess a lot mainstream spirituality is all about, right? Like, and that's a separate discussion, but which is why all the great spiritual gurus, they all get exposed later on, like, whether it's Russell Brand, whether it's our big guru from our land, and people are gonna
Uh-huh.
fucking hate Deepak Chopra. Everyone's gonna fucking hate us now, right? Which is like, yeah, like everyone's telling you to like become spiritual. Nobody's telling you that the world is a fucked up place and things need to change. And this isn't about you sitting on the mountaintop and meditating and forgetting everything that is happening. There's a larger purpose to this, and it's because we're all one. But I'll just shut up on that. Is like I think like these themes, that's how they tie in for me. That's how they tie into me. And I know that that's a lot of people. Hopefully we'll find them. Hopefully somebody will listen to this podcast, and we'll have more discussions. But I guess as kind of a summary, or for you, like how does all of this tie in for you, for your personal life and your philosophy?
My personal philosophy, I was actually journaling about that earlier today. Like, why do I find myself in certain situations over and over again? And it's there in my chart. Earlier when you were saying a regulated nervous system isn't about being nice and calm all the time. That is reflected in my chart as someone with Pluto in the second house. I have both Taurus strengths and also Taurus shadows, which is stagnancy, too much comfort, which is why I am headed in the opposite direction. And I keep finding myself in situations that just force me to sit in transformation. It is very uncomfortable for me
Mm,
because I just want to be peaceful all the time.
mm,
But that's not what my soul has chosen. So yeah, this is how it ties. And I realize that I'm going to be spending a lot of time in liminal spaces and
mm.
I'm going to need help. I'm going to need somatic practices to sit through it and not like run away from the anxiety that will cause. It'll cause me anxiety for sure. I know. Every time it does, I just like give up. I'm like, oh, I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to deal with this. I can just go back to my peaceful life. No, I keep finding myself in the same situation again and again. So personally, yeah, this is why this time with the knowledge of evolutionary astrology and somatic help from people like you, I'm not going to run away.
There you go.
Firstly, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to walk through this.
We're gonna talk and breathe through this and cry through this and dance through this and all of that stuff. And I think that's also bringing me to a great point was, and as I'm learning more and more about like somatic work and everything, the one thing clearly was we need to expand our container. Like what we call increasing our capacity to handle this stuff. For a lot of people who have, like it's like kind of like jumping into cold water, man. If you haven't done it, it's going to be a big shock to the body. It's maybe a shock that you can't handle. And so there is a lot of this popular stuff about, just dive into it and just dive into it. And like, no, maybe you titrate yourself, like, so I do tell people that, especially, or at least that's partly what I want to do, is build this community where we can create co-regulation and safety together, which will allow us to do this deep shadow work. Anyone's watching, just be gentle and compassionate with yourself and just don't dive deep in. And ultimately, I do feel like we are not supposed to do this alone. We were never meant to do any of this alone. It has to happen in community. And at least this is partly an endeavor from our point to have, I guess, create a larger community around this kind of shit. You know what I mean?
That's a very Pluto and Aquarius thing to say. That's correctly Pluto's position. We're not meant to do this alone. Aquarius is about community. We want to do this together in community.
Yep. No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, and there's just so much, which is what I love. And every time we talk about, I'm like, wait a minute, I need to write this down because I'm still trying to, no matter how much I've read, my brain, it is a little bit too much for me. And so I love that I sometimes feel this need to like learn everything. And as a Gemini, I need to know this. But right now, I'm like, no, I just need to have a friend who knows all of this shit. And then and then I can learn a little bit through that and or ask questions rather than like, the hell am I going to do internal medicine, in like somatics, like in nervous system regulation, and no,
Very Gemini life.
very Gemini alive, like how much am I, and which is, I want to keep doing it, but this is a good way to learn. And so I look forward to like, I don't know, like, just asking you more questions and having like, interviewing you as an astrologer. Literally just like, I feel like that could be a few episodes of me be like, hey, listen, I tried reading astrology. All right. Couldn't get it. Can you explain this to me? And just the way you describe the natural archetypes, I think like people would like that. I don't know, you know, and if more than two people watch this, please comment and let us know if you want Shikha to give you a lesson on astrology.
This
Um,
was great. Thank you so much for thinking of somatic astrology. It's your idea, the bridging of two fields, seeing the dots and connecting them. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for creating all of this.
of course. I will also, I know that you're also, by the way, just before we end, I know you're also, um, you're now trying to, and you are like doing like evolutionary astrology readings. So, like on this channel, we'll put your information down, how people can reach out to you. I have personally started doing like, sessions with people now, more somatic approach and nervous system approach, some trauma release work, and have a community where we can try and like expand this container so that we can meet the shadows. Uh, but anyways, this was good. I am gonna stop this recording now, and then we can keep chatting. Okay, give me 1 second.
Until next time.
Bye
Bye.
bye.